According to the MBTI manual, ISFJs make up 13.8% of the population, making this the number one most common of the 16 types in the U.S. population. ISFJs are known for appearing quiet, reserved, and kind. They prize harmony and peace, and they combine this with their hardworking approach to completing tasks on time in an effort to create an environment that runs smoothly and has as little conflict as possible. And I mean as little conflict as possible. Put that in the biggest letters you can fit on the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
ISFJs generally show a desire to make sure the needs of individuals are taken care of in practical ways. This is most easily accomplished in areas where expectations are clearly laid out in a detailed and organized fashion, and the environment is peaceful and considerate. ISFJs generally excel and enjoy behind the scenes and support roles rather than being the center of attention or the person in charge, though they are certainly capable of leading. Often, ISFJs take joy in organizing workspaces and their homes in a way that is functional, comfortable, and aesthetically pleasing for themselves and those they live with and entertain. As family members and friends, ISFJs are typically extremely devoted and loving, and they take on the role of peacemaker, caretaker, and tradition carrier pretty naturally. Welcome to Personality Playbook. I'm Sadie Young.
And I'm Kayla Whittle.
And if you haven't noticed, today we are talking about ISFJs.
ISFJs.
And we'll say that this is the most common type. And I sometimes have ISFJs when I tell them that it's the most common type that are disappointed by that. But I would like to point out that, because they're like, oh, we're boring. But there are 16 types. It's not like you're 60% of the population.
Right.
13.8% is still a minority in drastic fashion. Mm-hmm. It's just more than the other types.
Yeah. And I think sometimes they're surprised to hear that because they sort of feel like their little way about them and the things they worry about are, like too much or overblown or like they're internalizing too much. And they're like, oh, there aren't a lot of people doing that. And I'm like, oh, there are.
For sure. Yeah. And I will mention, in the interest of full disclosure, I've always been kind of surrounded by ISFJs in the same way that I have been surrounded by ISTJs. And that, because I think I've mentioned, Ben and my father are both ISTJs. Right. But my mom, my sister, and my longtime best friend are all ISFJs.
ISFJs. Yeah.
If I sound like I'm being kind of specific about things, it's because I'm having a lot of people to jump off of for this one. Yeah. When we talk about the type dynamics, which I forgot to put in our other notes and I had to pull it up real quick. Oops.
Oh, we're fine.
So
look at us.
Well, and it's like, I know the type dynamics off the top of my head. I did not have a clue what the 4 words were that I had for ISFJs. Yeah. So when we talk about type dynamics here, we have dominant, introverted, sensing. In other words, sensing is the function that is in charge here, but it's inside because the person is introverted. We have auxiliary, also meaning second, extroverted feeling. Yeah. Even though the feeling here is what you see, that's what they show to the world.
Right.
It's second place for them. It's their vice principal.
Yes.
And your vice principal often is the one that goes, you see that in schools. They're the ones that kind of go out and
right. Yeah, more visible
things. Right. While the principal's having meetings in the office.
Yeah. I would say, by and large, ISFJs can be criers.
Yeah.
Like they'll tear up.
Yeah.
They might not make it a whole big deal, and they might not want people to know that they're tearing up.
That's true.
But they are the warm in such a way that that's what you see, right? Like that's one of the ways. Yeah. I noticed that.
Yeah, and that extroverted feeling thing, that kind of makes sense with that.
That's what I was kind of in line with, is that extroverted feeling. You definitely see that.
I think being introverts, they'll sort of hide their crying.
Yes, for sure. That's what I said. They don't want it to be in front of everyone. But like if you look closely at an ISFJ during an emotional time, you can see.
Yeah, the welling. Yeah,
welling.
As opposed to some of the more extroverted, dominant, the types that show their feeling. Yeah. You might see them going, because, they're.
Like the wailers.
Yes. Some of them are good at opera, yes, because that's a very similar sound.
It is.
So ISFJs have tertiary, once again, there's that word that means third, thinking, and inferior extroverted intuition.
Inferior extroverted intuition.
Yes. And if that didn't make any sense to you, I promise we're getting to the type dynamics video, but that gives you a little bit of how that functions without getting into the details.
Right.
Which probably drives the ISFJs crazy because they wish that I would hurry up and get to the details now that I've mentioned them.
Right. You've been talking about the details for weeks.
Yes. I know.
We're going to get there.
I'm Gisty. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I'm not really, but I'm sorry to the ISFJs. The words that we have for ISFJs are caring, conscientious, trustworthy, and friendly.
Yes.
And the first note that I put on here, because this to me is the hallmark of ISFJs.
Yeah.
And please know I've worked with and met a lot of other ISFJs other than the ones that I know, because I don't want you to think that I'm just talking about those three people.
I know personally ISFJs and have counseled ISFJs.
Yeah.
I beautiful little creatures.
They are. Yeah. I used to work with a lot of nursing faculty at West Georgia, and there's a good many ISFJs in nursing. I saw that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's actually what made me put this piece on here. ISFJs despise conflict more than any other type.
Yeah.
I actually did a Myers-Briggs workshop on conflict with the nursing staff at West Georgia. And when I came, there were about 4 ISFJs in that group. And when I did the conflict workshop, I asked them how they approached conflict as an opening line. And they all looked at me like, first of all, they wanted me to leave. And second of all, they would figure out how to leave the conflict.
Yes.
When we talk about fight or flight, and now people talk about freeze.
Yes.
Those people froze when I asked them.
Yes.
And they're all about figuring out how to get away from the conflict.
Right. Flight or freeze, absolutely. I have an example. I got I was on a way to watch Harry Potter when it was in the movie theater. That tells you it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant when it was recently.
No. So it was in the car, and we get pulled over, and the ISFJ was driving, and I'm in the passenger seat. It was dark. And we were in a rental car because the other car was in the shop, There was like added pressure. Like when you get pulled over, you're like, this isn't even my car.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like there's some extra stuff there. So, she rolls the window down and the officer comes to the window. It's just this beautiful ISFJ moment, right? And he's like, license and registration. Where are y'all headed? He's trying to just be friendly and casual.
Yeah.
And she hands him what she needs to hand him. And he said, where are y'all headed? He asked again. She looked at me. And I leaned forward. I said, we're going to watch Harry Potter. And he was like, my wife's a Harry Potter fan. And he's looking and he said, is your name Elizabeth? And she goes, again, at me, looks at me. And I said, she goes by Beth. And she can talk. She's just feeling a lot of things right now, but she was totally frozen. Turns out, I guess they were trying to find somebody with a similar car in the area. There wasn't anything going on. We pull off. And we still laugh about that to this day, because it was this moment that this ISFJ felt this conflict.
Right.
And it was compounded by the fact that it wasn't even her car, and she didn't want to have to explain through that, you know what I mean? Like that whole piece of it. She just defaulted to Kayla. Like, what's my name?
Yeah, they can't stand the appearance that there's something.
That there's something wrong, or that they've, been in the wrong, right?
Yeah.
Or like, leaving Target and the little beepers go off.
Right.
Right. I just keep walking. I'm like, I didn't steal anything.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, I'm fine.
And so an ISFJ would be like, check my bag. I promise. There's like, I'm honest.
Yes.
Anyway, that's just one of my favorite little flight or freeze moments.
Exactly.
From a ISFJ I love a lot.
Well, and I think I've said in our videos before, as an INFJ, I enjoy, I appreciate harmony. I don't like genuine conflict, but I rather enjoy playful arguing.
Sure.
I think that's
like
a lot of
mental gymnastics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, if you know where you stand with the person and you're not worried about, like, I wouldn't do that with somebody that I was like, I don't know.
Sure.
But, I find that to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, my sister, who's an ISFJ, if I would play fight with anybody, my mom, despite being an ISFJ, she and I actually enjoyed play fighting with each other.
Yeah.
But that was our thing, and it was understood and we knew it. And, I was probably the biggest thorn she ever had in her side anyway. It was like she was used to really yelling at me, and it was probably fun that she could just fake yell at me.
There you go.
But my sister, she was just like, why are you guys always fighting? And I'm like, what's your problem? We're not really fighting.
We're fine.
But she couldn't stand the fake conflict.
Even the fake conflict.
Yeah. It bothered her.
Right.
Now, I put this in here.
I know. I saw that.
I know this is funny. But I put candy dish at work. And you know why? Because almost every ISFJ I've ever met has a candy dish on their desk at work if they live in a place where that's appropriate.
Right.
Work in a place where that's appropriate.
I would say that there's dual purposes for that. Okay. One of them is because they're warm and friendly.
Yes.
And they like to meet people's needs and, this is something here. The other reason is because you might get a piece of candy and put it in your mouth and not talk to them, which they would also like while they're working.
Interesting.
They want to be working and they're like, the candy's here. Eat it.
So, it's funny. I think one of the things that I haven't talked about yet, and I think this definitely applies with both ISFJs and INFJs. F is faux E. I've always said that.
Because it's people-y without being people-y.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Exactly. F makes you get out there with the people. You want to help the people. You can't do that really without interacting with the people.
Right.
And they are certainly more comfortable in the small groups and things like that, but they're going to be more talkative with individuals at least than somebody who's, an IT.
Sure.
And it still drains them. Right. That's why they're still an introvert. Like when they are around groups of people, and when they do some of that, I don't even know what the word is. Things
fraternizing.
Fraternizing when they they tend to be really big on party, like doing the behind scenes work of a party and entertaining and that kind of stuff. They tend to love entertaining, but they tend to like to be in the background, and they want to see, it's a little bit Gatsby-ish. They want to see everybody else having a good time.
Well, and potentially hosting, because that will keep you busy and occupied for the event, but also meeting people's needs and caring for people and providing a space where they can interact and have fun, and you can observe that.
Exactly. I was actually getting a text message from an ISFJ that
I saw that.
And it totally, totally ruined my train of thought. They tend to do that. That will exhaust them because it is people-y, but because the payoff is in that F and they're helping people have a good time, they do it anyway. So that's why I call it E. You still have the energy drain, which still makes you a real introvert. Right. But the F makes you do it anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, that candy dish at work can also, and this is where I thought you were going with this, but it can also be, stress candy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If people, can't talk, gotta have a caramel in my mouth.
Or, I can't with you anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat about it.
A piece of chocolate.
Or as Ben and I say, these are my feelings.
Yes.
How many feelings am I going to eat now?
I need to eat some feelings.
We say that all the time.
Yeah.
And, these are not people who are going to seek the spotlight.
Absolutely not. They're going to avoid it.
Right.
Right.
But they will do many things behind the scenes. And if they see that something's not getting done, they will have a tendency to take it on themselves. And they don't want to cause conflict. They generally won't complain to anybody in their workplace.
They just strap it on as extra work for them to do.
But if a period of time goes by where they're not really shown appreciation for that, then they will be upset about it. But they still will not want to rock the boat. They'll tell their people.
Right. Their very small circle will know, like, hey, I've been working really hard and it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting because the way they want to be recognized for work, you know, is different as well. It's like they also don't want someone to make them stand up at the faculty meeting and say, wow, look, let me tell you all the things that they would be mortified.
Right.
That's not how they want it either. But they need the people that are in the right positions in a small setting and like a one-on-one to be able to say, hey, I know you've taken on more because of all the things that have gone on, and I just really appreciate you doing that. That's the space that they need it. Right? They don't need like pomp and circumstance and confetti guns happening.
Right. Well, and you know, if you wanted to even go a step further, you would say something to the effect of, I appreciate all the work that you've been taking on. Is there anything you need taken off of your plate?
Right. And asking them that they don't have to broach that subject that might create conflict. You go ahead and open the door for them to respond. Yeah. No, that.
With that being said, I want to encourage the ISFJs to stand up for themselves.
Yes, for sure.
That's
Find
important.
your voice.
You know, there's always a balance with type between, you know, learning how to accommodate others who are a different type than you are, but also understanding, like you always say, you know, you're an ENFP, but you can't show up late to everything and just say, I'm an ENFP.
Right.
You have to adapt with the world.
I like to say that I'm domesticated.
Instead of feral. I've adopted that from you.
Listen, there are feral ENFPs in the world.
I wonder if there are any feral ISFJs, because that would be weird. I don't even know what that looks like.
Well, we haven't seen them because they're in the woods.
That's true. Yes, now I'm going to be looking for that every time I go in the woods. There are feral ISFJs running around. They might be hugging trees very privately, yes. But they have friends that are squirrels.
They do,
I think so. And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, really?
Shut up, move on.
Right, please don't tell people we like squirrels. They can be the unsung heroes in that way. But, you know, just saying what I was saying, like with the ISFJs, I know that you hate the conflict, but you have to understand that sometimes it's worth it.
Right. And really the only way to learn that it's worth it is to dive in that first time and do it and see and like reap the benefits of having a courageous conversation, right? As some people call them, right? Like when you can really step into that and say the hard thing and then see that people aren't leaving the room, people aren't hating you.
And that's a huge one.
Right. And that they actually value that input.
Yes.
Those experiences are what allow you to get to a place where you can tolerate. I'm not going to say because I don't think you'll ever get to that point.
I don't think so.
But where you can tolerate and understand the value in confrontation when it's necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not asking you to go out and fight the battles of the world, because that's not what you're going to do. And we'd be kind of scared if you did.
Right.
But yeah, for sure, standing up for yourself is a good thing.
Right. Yeah. I find that they're better at standing up for others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's true.
That kind of leads us into this like unsung heroes, right?
Uh-huh. Yes, the unsung part. Yeah, they're a bit better at championing. And I would say that's true for INFJs too. Now, we will stand up for ourselves if we feel like we need it, but we mostly don't feel like we need it.
Right, because
because we feel like we're okay. But if we see you abusing someone else,
that ain't all right.
Let me tell you.
That ain't all right.
ISFJs, I think, will defend someone else, but won't defend themselves as much. Sure. Generally speaking. Now,
if anything's going to inspire them to engage in confrontation, it is protecting another human.
Yes.
Especially the people they love.
And there are people, I do know some ISFJs who have, worked through the whole feeling that they're going to be hated and that kind of thing, that can deal with conflict. So, we never want to say that all types are like this, but you see the tendency enough that it's worth speaking about.
And I think even when they get more well-versed with conflict or more tolerant of conflicts, it still feels like a really heavy weight to do it.
Sure.
Right? Like, I don't think that
it's not going to be a natural.
For me, it still feels like a really heavy weight to live on a schedule every day.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can do it and I can bear the weight of that now. But the fact that it feels like a heavy weight, I don't think that's changing.
Yeah.
Because of who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like if you tried to make me do something super repetitive that didn't require creativity, it's like I can get through it, like data entry.
Right.
Like you said that you would sell yourself on the corner with your singing talent. That sounded bad for a minute. You
finish the sentence. I'm not a floozy. I just said I'm not feral.
No, you're not feral. Well, that's a different thing than feral.
That's a different kind of feral. That's a lot different than feral.
Yes, but yeah, you would sell your singing talent. You would sing you would busk.
I would busk before I would do data entry.
Yes.
100%. I would put a hat down and be like, hey, what do you want me to do today?
I could do data entry. I have done, because I've mentioned before that I love making spreadsheets.
Right.
People tend to think that you want to fill them in when you make them. It's not true, but it's what people think.
Right.
And so, that drives me freaking bananas, but I can do it. But it's it would never be anything but a heavy weight.
Yeah, for sure. It's like anytime that we say, like an ISFJ is going to be conflict avoidant. And I think a lot of them remain that way for their life. But a lot of people, that are ENFPs remain unable to follow a schedule for their life, right? It's like we're always capable. You just have to remember, and it goes back to, I think we did it in the first video, this like handedness thing. Like I can get pretty good at writing with my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand, but it is never going to feel like it does when I write with my dominant hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, for ISFJs, this may be your left hand.
Yeah.
When you were younger, even, or your non-dominant hand.
Right.
You could be left-handed to start with. One thing that we also mention, and this I think goes to that piece that we're talking about, they feel like if they don't do it, it's not going to get done.
Right.
And that's the reason that I say that if you're giving praise to an ISFJ, offering to, see if there's anything that needs to come off of their plate, is an important, it's a nice piece to add to that.
Right.
They will be concerned that whoever takes it on might not be able to do it as well as, they're going to want to make sure that the person can do it correctly.
Right.
And that can be hard to let go of sometimes because they would really, with S's, there's a more narrow idea of correct.
Sure.
Because they're detail oriented and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like if I were to take it over, I'd probably do it a different way, and they'd be like, "No, that's not how you do it." Yes, and that in my way would be more gisty, probably.
Yeah,
and there would be more chance of something going wrong.
Right, and they definitely do not want to make a mistake.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's pretty. Like standard for a lifetime core trait of an ISFJ is like, I desperately do not want to make a mistake. And it probably is because the mistake could potentially lead to conflict. Yes. You know what I mean? Like that's probably like the core of it. But truly, even just knowing who they are and really when they're like in the zone and doing their work, they don't make a lot of mistakes.
No.
I mean, honestly.
Don't. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once we get to ISTJs, ISTJs don't want to make mistakes either. That's a big thing for them, but it's not because they're trying to avoid conflict. It's because they don't want to fail.
Right.
It's, because those are sort of sibling
the F and the T thing,
so to
for
speak.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so, for people who are trying to figure out which one they are, maybe that's kind of a distinction.
Yeah, that like core belief of like, why am I a conflict avoidant, or why am I avoidant of, wanting to make mistakes? Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, for Fs in general, when we don't want to make mistakes, it's because we don't want people to not like us.
Yeah, or hurt
or hurt another person.
Unintentionally.
It's going to be pretty people centered.
Yeah,
generally.
or like cost them a ton of money because we put the number in wrong, or Yeah. Yeah.
The organization piece we put in here, they're anxious about disharmony and organization. I feel like we've pretty well covered the harmony part, but the disorganization part, And this is not to say that, I kind of think about Monica on Friends. She's not an ISFJ. I think she's probably an ESFJ.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
But yeah, I do think about with ISFJs, they will have a lot of things that are very organized, and they love their label makers.
Yes,
much.
A great profession would be like a professional organizer,
right?
But a lot of the ISFJs I know would be like, oh no, I'm not that good at it.
Right.
But then like you open their closet and you're like,
do you want to see what mine looks like? Because then you'll want to organize it for me.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll be like, this gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Right.
But they do tend to have a messy space.
Yes. Like one space.
Yes. And you know what I'm talking about with Monica and Friends. That closet that never got opened until she and Chandler were married. And then he was like, you're a slob. Yeah. Because it was a terrifying tiny little closet.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of have to have, and I kind of think that's healthy.
I do too. It's refreshing.
Right? It's, it's like there is a space in my life.
I'm glad that your purse is full of little Kleenex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You have fuzzy mints in your purse.
Exactly. That makes me happy. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we really want to cover with ISFJs. We definitely, I want to, because I feel like we've put a lot of stress on the things that are tough for ISFJs and that they don't like to do.
Right.
But they really are completely the unsung heroes of
100%.
many families.
Oh, absolutely.
They tend to be very good at aesthetic type things.
Yeah.
Now, these are certainly people that are going to have a lot of photos, usually, as part of their aesthetic. Yeah, we talk about differences in art between intuitive types and sensing types. And sensing types tend to have things that represent something real, which is why I painted my sister's dog as opposed to, doing she does have one of my more abstract wood pieces in her house too. But,
right.
But yeah, they tend to like to represent family and traditions and things like that in their homes. But they love throw pillows more than any other type.
Yeah, lots of throw pillows.
Unless they're guys, they may not.
And this might not be true like across the board, but I think a lot of ISFJs are pretty neat, like pretty tidy. Like they have clean homes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a dislike of clutter.
Sure.
Right. Except the one space.
Yeah.
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 But like by and large, like if you popped in on an ISFJ house, it's probably pretty neat.
Yeah. Unless they have small children.
Right.
And they're in that particular...
If they're in the throes of toddlerhood,
right.
And, nobody does, right? If you have a clean house in the throes of toddlerhood, like I need to see the padded room that you keep your toddler in.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think that. And I think another cool thing about ISFJs is that if you know them well, if you can get in their inner circle, right? If you can, get to that place, then they're not stressed out or they're not feeling drained by your presence necessarily, right? Because you can get, and that's true with that's an introvert quality. Yes. Like you can get in the circle of trust.
Exactly.
You can get in the circle of trust and you're no longer a drain on them. And I have an ISFJ in my life where when I know she's hosting an event, I don't even ask. I just show up and I'm like, I'm going to cut potatoes. And I can be shoulder to shoulder with her. And I know that it's no longer a drain on her. But I also know she's not going to call me the day before. Yeah. And say, it would be really nice if you came over and, that's really not going to happen. So it's cool once you know that you're not feeling like an imposition or feeling like they have to like be some kind of way when you're around. Like once you're in that circle of trust.
You're part of the crew instead of being one of the guests.
Exactly. Then you get to come in and really be a support to them and make them feel really loved and encouraged because you're like, hey, I see all the hard work you're doing and I'm just going to shoulder it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about last night before I went to sleep that I was like, you kind of have to say this, and maybe I shouldn't, but it's not bad. It's funny. So like I said, my sister and my best friend, both ISFJs, and I made a joke one time when they were both over here for dinner about how they like to organize things. Yeah. And they ended up having the most delightful discussion about how they place tater tots on a baking sheet to bake them. The spaces between how many rows there are. Now, Honestly, that may be kind of a good litmus test for type, because it never occurred to me in my life that I would I don't cook tater tots anyway, but it never occurred to me that you would organize tater tots.
No.
I think, and here's,
maybe just enough to spread it
to
out.
To have one layer.
Yeah, one layer, so it's not like a pile mushy on one side. But other than that, I can't imagine turning them or.
Yeah. But they were having,
or when I make the chicken nuggies for my kids,
best time talking about how they organize the tater tots. And also, if you ever tell a small piece of information to an ISFJ, be prepared to answer the questions, because they have lots of questions about the things.
Sure.
And,
and lists.
Yes, they have lists.
They have lists.
And my mom will sometimes take notes when she talks to me on the phone, and she'll ask me all the things. And for the love of God,
yes, taking notes. They are note takers.
They are note takers. And I'm like, Mom, put the pen down. And then she doesn't remember what we talked about, and I'm like, fine, take notes, but just keep it far enough away that I don't hear your pen scratching, because I feel like I'm in a psychologist office when you're sitting here taking notes while you're talking to me. But she has to,
because you can imagine how an NF personality, your an SF is what is happening?
And I'm sitting here going, I don't know what might come out of my mouth.
No, me either. You don't have to take note of it.
I don't want you to write it down, because I need plausible deniability here, right? Sure. But I've gotten to the point now where I will call my mom and say, I almost didn't tell you this because I don't have any more information than what I'm about to tell you. I know you're going to want to ask me about it. Right. I don't know. I'm going to tell you everything I know, and that's all I know.
Yeah.
And I've found that when I do that, she only asks me 5 questions afterwards instead of 32.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a coping mechanism that I've found over the years. But if you buy a new car and you text someone to tell them that, you have a new car, and you know that there's an ISFJ in their life that's going to ask about it, say what color the car is, for God's sakes, because that's going to be the first thing they want to know is what color is the car.
What color is it?
Unless they're a guy.
Or drive it over here. I want to see it. I want to get in it. I want to touch it. I want to feel it.
It's cute that you invited yourself over to their house. They don't want you there.
But only if you're in the circle of trust.
That's true.
If you're in the circle of trust, you can.
That's true.
But here's the thing. If you don't know whether or not you're in the circle of trust, you're not in the circle of trust.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah. So, and we've really focused on women for the most part here. There are plenty of ISFJ males.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are a little bit less on the throw pillows.
Yeah. But still neat, orderly, tidy.
And worried.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely worried, I think, is there. Are we going to mention that in the hard, dark places, they can have some bitterness about them?
We should probably mention that.
I think we should.
Yeah, that's what they're prone to more than probably more than any other type. Yeah. If they are unappreciated for a long period of time.
Which is, understandable.
And honestly, if you hate conflict, as ISFJs do, I want you to think about that, because that is what leads to the bitterness, is not standing up for yourself. And you're not going to see a bitter 20-year-old ISFJ probably, but you'll see that as ISFJs tend to age, if they have never learned how to stand up for themselves, that they will be resentful of that.
Yeah.
And
hold that in and not know how to express it to the point where it just feels icky.
That is, wait for it, internal conflict.
That's what it is.
If you don't want to have conflict with someone else, think about whether you'd rather have conflict with somebody else for a few minutes or permanently have conflict with you.
Yourself.
Ooh.
That's good. Mic drop. These mics don't drop, but if they did, I would drop it. Good.
So, All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for the time being for ISFJs. We will have more on you guys later. I hope you feel like we've done enough. We say these things out of love because ISFJs 100%. Are wonderful.
Wonderful.
We want to see them thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Cue the ninjas. And you're right.
Maybe we can make him jump on our hands.
Oh, I can do that. Challenge accepted now that I'm quoting How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.